I'm doing it right now. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, and three, two, one. All right, guys, welcome back to the Tuddle Daily Podcast. I've decided to move out by the water for my interview today because I wanted to impress my next guest. Now, is it Alana or Elena? Because I never want to butcher people's names.
Sure. So, my first name is pronounced Elena.
Elena. Okay. So it's not Alana, it's Elena.
Yeah, yeah, hard I on that.
Now, now, Elena, I are you native Canadian? Because I do not hear like a real accent, but I also haven't been talking because there's some words that'll come out and be like, oh, yeah, that's definitely a Canadian.
Yeah, I am native Canadian, but people do comment on my accent quite a bit.
I
I
can
think
hear it a
it's
little bit now. I
yeah.
can hear it a little bit now. Now you're in Ontario?
Mhm, yeah, I live in Toronto.
How far away from Peterborough are you? Because
Mhm,
the last radio show that I worked on, we broadcast out of Tampa,
mhm.
and we were heard in Peterborough.
Oh, not very far away from Peterborough at all. I honestly couldn't give you, like,
No,
a
yeah,
distance, but it's not far.
it's not
It's
that far away.
yeah.
No, it's kind of like a suburb, like one of those little cities outside of Toronto area,
Mhm.
kind of like, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
right in the what we call the GTA. Yeah.
what is it? Are we talking Grand Theft Auto when you say GTA, or like what I
Greater
mean?
Toronto area.
Okay, all right, all right, all
Yeah.
right. See, I mean, I'm an American because we
Yeah.
go straight directly to the violence and Grand Theft Auto. But Elena, I gotta tell you, okay, I I've gone to all the conventions. Like I am a nerd. You can tell that just by hearing me talk. Um, and I gotta tell you that you are like the girl that gets the attention. But it's got to be hard because I've looked at these cons and I've talked to a lot of women about the cosplay doesn't mean consent type stuff,
Mhm.
and I really do feel like women are put in a hard place that are sexy looking, attractive, but also in that nerd wheelhouse. I mean, does that bother you for me to say nerd or no?
Oh, not at all, no, like, I mean, to put it in a little bit of context here, a lot of my costumes are also used for burlesque acts
I saw
and,
you were a Trekkie. I saw you were a
yeah,
Trekkie in some
yeah.
of your Instagram photos. By the way, I
Mhm.
followed you
Oh,
on
no problem.
there. But have you ever had any problems like that? Like, do you go to the conventions? Have you ever run into those uncomfortable moments where those awkward guys will come up and, maybe be a little too touchy-feely or try to get a picture and stuff? I mean, it's gotta be hard, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I myself have been working in environments where women tend to get approached by men, since I was quite young, since I was about 12. My
Mhm.
father actually produces a television show that's about cars, so we would go to
I
car
see
shows.
you. Yeah, all right, you're
Yeah,
Canadian just came out when you said "a boat."
a boat, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so that one came out, so
Well,
sorry, I didn't mean
I
to interrupt
no
there.
problem, no, like, I grew up in rural Ontario too, so, like,
Mhm.
some of it sounds, like, very country, I know.
Alright, so but I'm glad you bring that up, okay, because
Yeah.
here in America, because I work in an audio format,
Mhm,
and I pay attention to dialects, from because we have them here in the United States,
mhm,
and I went to work out on some jobs up in New York. Now, when
mhm.
I hear myself talk, I don't think of myself as talking slow. I think of myself as very high strung. But the New Yorkers were like, why are you talking so slow? Because you're from the South. But when people think of Canada, you guys do like, all right, so here in America, we have like rednecks, country people. Do you have that type of stuff in Canada?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, the town I grew up in, like, I lived in what was, like, the suburb, kind
Yeah.
of, but, like, you drive for 5 minutes and it's all farms. Like, it's and as soon as you cross the line, it's, like, same thing as you'd expect in the States. It's, like, all, your cowboy boots and your, shortened and contracted words, and people have an idea of what that means. There's a little bit more, of that, I would say, out in Alberta, which is out
Mm,
on the west coast of the country.
yeah.
But even
Mhm.
here in Ontario, it's like even though we're so close together, you cross the train track and it's like
Mhm.
a whole other world.
Yeah, it's surprising, because of the radio shows that I've worked on. Canada is outside of the United States my biggest downloads when it comes to my podcast, and then it goes to the United Kingdom. So you kind of have that like triple threat there of the connection. Now, you do burlesque,
Mhm.
correct? You do
Yeah.
that. Now what is the difference? Like explain to people when they hear burlesque, they're thinking of the old good old country western days where that was what stripping was considered back in the day. But explain burlesque to the people that maybe do not know.
Sure. So, I mean, they're not entirely wrong, but it is a much more diverse art form now than it used to be. It used to be tied in very much so with like vaudeville, and there would be a lot of comics that would come up, and it still happens today. But it's still a form of striptease most of the time, but that's not a
Yeah.
requirement at these events all the time. And depending on the format of the show and who's producing it and where you're going, you could end up seeing something that's a little bit more risque or something that's a little bit more
Mhm.
classic. There's a whole nerdlesque community, which is I'm a big part
Wait,
of.
whoa! I
Yeah.
gotta back up. What is that now? Like, cause
Mhm,
now I've being in the nerdy type community,
mhm,
the nerdcore, like, hip hop music scene, like, I went to a whole music festival in Orlando one time that was nerd related, but it was a lot of hip hop and alternative type musicians,
mhm.
that play to that community.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a lot of the music that they've been producing probably end up in a lot of the acts that I'm seeing and that I'm putting in shows. It's like burlesque, but all of the acts will be inspired by nerd culture. So, like the Star Trek outfit that I
Yeah,
have
mhm.
is a Beverly Crusher act, and that gets done to a couple of different songs that all talk about
Have
Doctor,
you
and there's stuff cut in from
you
TNG.
say
It's like a whole thing.
you you say Doctor, have you
Yeah.
ever done a Doctor Who themed
I don't
burlesque?
have one. I have seen it. I don't have an
But
act for one yet.
it would be great though, because now
Mhm.
I wanna talk a little bit about that. Now I know
Mm,
my audience, because, my audience is because I've worked on a lot of radio shows that are that men 25 to 54, those, like, blue collar type people.
mhm,
But, and I know a lot of people are gonna think, "Oh, this is nerdy," but, like, it's a great concept, but Doctor Who does kind of make women look like that helpless. I mean, they're still strong, but they are so in love with the Doctor,
mhm.
and they need them. They're like the damsel in distress type thing. Um, does that bother females that are in the nerd community, like,
It
at all?
can. They usually like to take the characters and play with them, when we're talking about, like, in a nerdless community sort of thing.
Mhm.
So they tend to take some of your less empowered women and make them more empowered and read into it more to give them more agency, but the raw material itself, yeah, can set off debate. For sure.
What is if you and I'm not trying to pitch on the spot, but
Mm,
what is the as a young girl, if you were a young girl right now,
mhm,
and you do, if I had to guess, see, I'm a Southern gentleman, so I don't want to ask how
mhm.
old you are, but I mean, I would say like 20s, right?
Yep, I turned 26 just a couple weeks ago,
Okay,
so
so what I'm trying to say is that um when you were growing up, what were some of the female or woman icons that you looked up to that were in sci-fi shows or comic books and stuff like that?
Sure. So, I mean, coming up, that's always sort of a difficult place to pull from. But I mean, like that's part of why I picked Beverly Crusher when I did my Star Trek act,
Mhm.
because she's like women in power positions, women who have authority, things like that were always sort of interesting and attractive to me. Uh, I'm now trying to think of other other
Well,
places, but
I'll
yeah.
I'll give you some time to think, but while
Sure.
we're on Star Trek,
Mm.
with all the civil unrest going on here in the United States,
Mhm.
between, classes, races, all that type of stuff, um, I've always read that the first interracial kiss on TV was
Mhm.
actually on Star Trek, right?
Yep, that's correct. Mhm.
I mean, I don't think enough people give that enough credit that a show like that would take that type of risk and chance, especially in that time.
Oh, absolutely, and I mean, a big part of that was because it was produced primarily by a woman, like, I mean, Lucille Ball was the person who
Oh, I
championed
did
that
not
show.
know that. I did
Mhm, yeah.
not know that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, like, that's why if you look at the end of the credits, it's a Desilu production, it's from her company.
Wow, I've never paid attention to that at
Mhm,
all, and, like, because I like to keep my shows light. I like to keep
mhm,
it on the comedic type level.
mhm,
I do take the opinions that maybe aren't the most popular at some time, but I've always have been so fascinated by the women that are in comedy, okay? Like
mhm.
Lucille Ball, you talk about that, like she was kind of groundbreaking, a
Oh,
woman
yeah.
that was groundbreaking. But then you look at like, and I don't know how much you know about American culture, but like Joan Rivers,
Mhm,
when she was hosting the Tonight Show, she never really got a fair shot because that was a man's type of business. They were
mhm.
like, "Oh, a woman cannot host this show," but some of the stuff she was doing was groundbreaking at the time.
Oh, yeah, and women in comedy always get, like, a difficult shake everywhere they go,
Well,
you know. Yeah.
here in America, a lot of men think that women can't be funny, though.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear that all the time. I in the States and here, it's a problem. I mean, even here in Toronto, because we have a second city here, that do productions, like, they only recently did a show that was very female focused, and the sales on that were way lower than any of their other main stage shows. Like, it's always a problem to try to get people to trust that it's going to be good, and it usually is good. You're usually pleasantly surprised, but people don't give it a shot.
So if I'm prying too much, like personally with what you do,
Mhm.
are you dating somebody right now? Do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a significant other?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I've
A-
had the same boyfriend for 8 years. So
Now, but like, has it ever been difficult though? Because I mean, you get a lot of attention from guys.
mhm,
Has there ever been a problem of any type of jealousy at all, or like, hey, might want to back it down a little bit? I'm not saying that you're strained, but but guys, guys like to act
mhm.
like tough guys and stuff. Like, when with breakups, everybody thinks that the woman is the one that is taking it the hardest, but the dudes, even though they don't like to say it, they're the ones that are most likely crying or taking it harder than the female. But like guys do get jealous though.
Mhm. I mean, it definitely has been something you've had to talk about, but I'm lucky that I've got somebody with me that is very understanding, and because he also comes from like a theater background, like that's actually where we met, was in theater school. Like he does comedy too, so like
But
he
that's but
gets
that can
it.
but that can be a problem though
Mm,
when you have two people in a relationship that are in entertainment, like putting out content because like even though the other will not okay, I'm 40 years old, okay?
mhm,
Um so I've been through a lot. I've been working in radio and I'm just letting you know and giving you a heads up is that sometimes it can be hard
mm.
when you have two people that are content providers or content creators that are entertainers and one maybe gets a little bit, bigger than the other, there can be some resentment there.
Oh, yeah, no, I've seen it in other couples. It's definitely something that's present, but not in our we've just because we've been together so long at this point, it's just sort of hit a point where we don't worry about it as much. Like, we sorta let each other just have our own careers and our own thing.
Okay, but I know I'm gonna pitch on the spot here, and you're probably gonna think so 8 years.
Mhm.
Are you guys even engaged right now?
We're not engaged. We just haven't thought about it, but like we live
Well,
together.
come on. I'm not trying to pitch you in a tough spot, and I don't
Yeah.
want to paint with a broad brush and say, oh, every woman is just waiting, for a man to propose to them and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you got to be honest. That has it crossed your mind? Like, when is he going to get off his ass and propose, or are you an old style, old school type person where the man has to be the one? Like, what alright, and then another
Mhm.
subsect question,
Mhm.
in Canada, is it like Americans where the guy should go to the father and ask for permission?
That depends, and I mean, I wouldn't want him to go to my father, but
Why?
that's more of a personal thing.
Okay, alright, yeah, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm like I said, I think of a lot of things, and
Yeah.
I try to take my own experiences and ask questions like that,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to be a dick or an a-hole or
No.
anything like that, but it's an interesting question because if you've been together for 8 years,
Mhm.
it's like, what is the holdup?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, well, I mean,
would
the
you
the
say
whole
yes?
honestly, yeah,
Would you
oh, I
say
know, yeah,
yes?
absolutely. No, the hold-up, honestly, I would say is, we are both in entertainment, so we don't have any money.
But I mean, and I get what you mean because when I
Yeah.
got married, like I wasn't somebody that needed a big wedding, but it's about the bride.
Mhm,
This is her special day. And I'll admit, when I got married, because I'm divorced
mhm,
now, but when I got married, it was a little extravagant. And
mhm,
then listen, every time I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this is gonna be this amount, it's gonna be this amount. But what I'm trying to say is like, but there's also a lot of couples
mhm,
like Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell here in the United States, they are used to be 2 big stars. They're still legendary, but they've never been married and they've had a great
mhm,
relationship and they've raised kids.
mhm. No, it's just something that we just have sort of put on the back burner. I'm not overly concerned about it, neither is
But is there a
he.
time
And
frame? Is there a time frame though? Like, are
no,
you
no,
are you
no. I'm okay. And I mean, I've got stories about this because like my parents don't put pressure on me for it because honestly, and I will be super honest about this, they don't really like him. Um, and his
I had
family
that
think
problem.
that it's me. His family think that I don't want it, even though I've explicitly told them that I do. They're like, "No, you're doing that feminist thing where you don't want to. It's okay. All the power to you." And I'm like, "No, it's not me. Talk to your son." Like,
Now, is it because the 2 families are that different? Like, because here, I'll give you an example, okay?
mhm,
When I was married, my wife was from the New York area, okay?
mhm,
I am born and raised in Florida, as southern as you can get,
mhm.
and I always felt like her family looked down on us like we were like a lower type of class people. Does that make sense at all? And
100%. His family is from, Montreal, so French Canadian, and
oh,
that's
now
a
it
big
does the
problem.
fr yeah, well, okay, alright, so alright, I'm glad you bring that up, and
Mhm,
you're talking so you have Canadian, then you have French Canadian. Like, is
mhm.
there a difference? Like, is there a
It's like
bias?
Catholic Protestant, because their family's Catholic and my family is, I guess,
Ooh,
technically Protestant, but I don't practice and it's a whole thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I just find it interesting because you know, people wanna talk about differences. You're from a different country, I'm
Mhm,
from a different country, and we kind of can relate on relationships that we've had with just the differences.
mhm.
People wanna talk about racism, but I also think here in the world that there is a big class difference. Like,
Oh, absolutely. I
we
mean, like, I'll come right out and say it that like his family is, economically in a lower class than mine. Mine's more firmly middle class, and that is a problem for my father specifically. Who and not to be the daddy issues girl, but like as even though he is a Canadian man born and raised here in Canada, is a Trump supporter who has
wow.
very strong views on that subject. He is an anti-masker, which is a big problem during a pandemic. He's a whole basket of fun.
Okay, so I'm not speaking for you, but I would think that you would not be a Trump supporter and you would be pro mask because, so I run into that because my dad is a Trump supporter as well too.
Mhm.
He
Yeah.
is. Now I a lot of people could hate their parents for it, but you also have to understand
Mhm.
we progress as a society with every single generation.
Mhm.
It's not that they are particularly bad people, it's
Yeah.
just of how they were raised, and that's how I look at it,
Oh, yeah, like,
and
I still talk to my dad, we still have a relationship, we fight about things for sure, but, like, I don't hate him or hate anybody necessarily who thinks the way that he does, it's just
Mhm.
a sore point between us, right? Because we come from
but
very different places when we talk about things.
but sometimes it's just not even worth like,
Mm,
my dad will say something and I'll be like, yeah, 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 yeah,
mhm.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there's no like point to debating things like that,
Oh,
because it's
no,
just
like,
gonna cause problems.
oh, for sure. No, like I try to avoid it if I can. With him, it's a little difficult sometimes. He likes to talk about it a lot. He
Mhm.
likes to think of himself as like he used to be a news reporter, to put it in a little bit of
Oh, no
context.
kidding.
He thinks of himself as a bit of a political pundit, even though he doesn't work on the news anymore. And
Yeah,
like he talks about cars with car people. It's a
that's
different
interesting.
thing. Yeah.
I, I, and I want to get in talking about and promote everything that you want to talk about. What are you drinking? A bubbly there? I
Oh, I
thought it
think
was a
that might
Dr. Pepper.
I don't
Thought it
know if
was
you
a
guys have that. No, no, it's just sparkling water. It's just
okay. All right.
yeah.
Because the radio show when I was working with Bubba in Tampa, we had a Canadian listener that would come down and he would bring us like products from Canada that we couldn't get here in the United States. Like
Mhm.
ketchup flavored potato chips. Like, I
Yep.
don't know what it is with Canadians liking ketchup flavored potato chips, but I got to tell you, they were actually pretty tasty.
I don't like them personally, but we're big tomato producers up in this area. There's one town in particular, not far from where I grew up, called
Mm.
Leamington, where all they do is tomatoes. Like you would
Uh,
drive down the street and trucks of tomatoes would just be going by you, and like the street would have them all covered all over. Like it's a whole thing.
all right. So, one last serious topic.
Mhm,
As Canadians, how is the Canadian media, Canada media,
mhm,
portraying what happened yesterday
mhm.
in America's national capital?
For sure. So, I mean, from the media that I have seen here in Canada, it seems to be most similar, I think, to the coverage that CNN is giving it. So it's
Mhm.
definitely more on the left side.
Yeah.
Yeah, like all of our media here is very left wing, honestly. Which center to left, I'd say. There are very few right wing outlets
Yeah.
here. You have to look for them. But yeah, it is. Generally, people are just shocked and really horrified, just the same as the States would be because we're so close. Canada likes to think of itself as like a suburb of the US in a lot of ways. So,
Well, I mean, you guys have vested interest on what's going on in our country because
mhm,
we share a border with each other. So
yeah.
it's like, I completely understand that. Now, so let's get off to serious stuff here. Now, tell people if they want to check out any of your content, like your social media, Instagram,
Mhm,
Twitter, Facebook, whatever it may be, a website.
sure.
How can they find all of your stuff?
Sure. So, my stage name is Dottie Champagne. So all of my socials are under that. So you can find me on Instagram. I am on Twitter, although that's not super active. Instagram's my main outlet. You can also find me at alenawalker.ca. So that's ALAINA. And I do also have a web store that's launching soon that will include merch for the new podcast I'm about to launch. Um, I have a lot of different stuff here, so I hope I'm not overwhelming you. But I've got
No, no, go ahead.
yeah. So the web store is called Dottie and the Duchess.
Hmm.
.ca.com. You can get it either way. And
Yeah.
the podcast is going to be called Sparkling Wine, spelled WHINE,
Oh.
with Dottie
Uh,
Champagne.
Now, now, and I'm just giving you my advice because I've
Mhm.
been working in radio since 1998, and I've done every single type of platform that you can think of. I've actually been a news producer as well too, so I know how it works. And now, you're gonna have to mix it up here a little bit. You
Mm,
have to use because you are an extremely attractive woman. You are unique now. Because and what would you say this? And please don't take offense to what I'm going to say. Okay.
mhm,
Um, I think more men are 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 being attracted and interested into more of the unique, interesting type woman. Okay.
mhm,
But you have both of that. You're unique, you have a great look to you, and you're attractive as well too. And then what I'm saying is use that. So when you do this
mhm,
podcast, is it going to be a video content or is it going to be just straight audio?
mhm. So I'm working with a producer right now to figure out exactly how we can do it, but we are considering doing live streams to start, like on Twitch potentially, where we talk with our guests there, and then launching it as a podcast afterwards, releasing it as an episode.
Yeah. So that's what I do. Like this,
Mhm,
what we're doing right now on Zoom. Okay.
mhm,
This is going to go up on my YouTube channel, and then I'm
mhm,
going to take the audio from that and repurpose it for my audio podcast.
mhm,
Because I know like my men audience, that
mhm.
25 to 54 is going to be like, hell yeah, they're going to hear the audio and they're going to go to my YouTube channel because they're going to want to check out like, what does she look like? And guys, I'm telling you, you're gonna want to go to my YouTube channel to check her out. Now, are you a natural ginger, or is like because
Mhm.
Americans they love the redheads and stuff like that.
I am
Now,
not a natural ginger. I do dye my hair, but
okay,
my natural hair color is sort of just like a mousy boring brown, and I'm not mousy
that's
boring
me.
brown.
I mean that's me though, but I like it though. I think it's a good
Mhm,
look. And the glasses, a lot of guys don't. If you look, everybody tells me my glasses are nerdy. They're too thick and everything. But I tell people I do that on purpose. Like
mhm,
I don't want to have the thin like wire frames. I want to go as thick as I can. I want to go with the hornbill rimmed or whatever,
mhm.
as nerdy as possible as I can get.
Oh yeah, no, if I'm just out in my everyday life, I'm wearing glasses all the time, and I mean, I got real lucky. I found a site online where I can order my crazy weird prescription for really cheap, and
You
I
go
ordered
Warby?
like 50.
Those look
I've
Warby
used them,
Parkers.
but there's one here in Canada called, I Buy Direct, and it comes
Okay.
out of Vancouver, so it's, like, not bad for us here with all the shipping, and it's,
Mhm.
like, 50 bucks Canadian, which is not
Yeah.
bad for a pair of glasses when I say that I am blind, like, my eyes are 2 different shapes, I need to get, like, super crazy weird grinding done, so for it to be $50 is amazing, and then I've got, like, 15 pairs of glasses, and they're all crazy frames.
Now, yeah, I mean, because a lot of the reason I brought up Warby Parker is like
Mm,
all the nerds in America they love to go because they have a
mhm,
very classic, like rustic type look to their frames and stuff.
mm.
Uh why haven't you gone with contacts? Or are you just not like comfortable putting stuff in your eyes?
I wore contacts all through high school, so, like, I'm used to them. Honestly, it's just they're so expensive for my weird eyes. So I just at one point, especially when I first moved to the city, I just didn't have the money for them. I fell out of it, and now I just don't wear them.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I
I thought
just don't.
us as Americans, we think that Canadians, they don't have to pay for anything when it comes to health
Oh,
related
that's
costs.
a lie. You
No,
have to
but
pay
but
for everything with your eyes. Your eyes are not covered at all unless you, like,
really?
poke your eye out. Yeah, like,
Are
you
you
don't get
are you
anything covered.
what about dental? Like, is that
Mm-mm.
covered for you? No,
Nope,
so
not at all.
they're
I haven't seen a
see
dentist in, like, 10 years.
that's the thing about it. Canada's got a great promotional, like, hype guy that's saying,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, everything's covered, but, Justin Trudeau is not giving you those eyes or teeth work.
Oh,
It's like
no,
you're
no
on your
eyes
own
or
on that
teeth.
one."
Yeah, you gotta hope your employer will give you benefits, and very few do here. I mean, I also have a day job. I work a full-time job, and I'm not
What do
getting
you
anything.
you don't have to say where, but can you give me an idea of, like, what you
Mm,
do? Like, I mean
yeah. I
okay,
work in the hospitality industry the rest of the year, so, like, I worked my way up from being, like, a restaurant host to now I work up in corporate events.
okay.
So
I'm so happy that you brought that up because, one of the first full-time radio jobs that I ever had, the host of the show. I was his producer, and he brought it up. It's a great point. People that are interested in being an entertainer or having relationships or being able to make that connection with people. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, so when you mean by hospitality, were you like a waitress, a server, and stuff?
Yeah, so I was primarily a host, and, like, that's one of the things I'm very, very good at actually is
But it
managing a
helps though,
floor.
right?
So,
Becau
yeah.
because the guy that I worked with, he said working in the hospitality industry helped
Mhm,
his people skills because
mhm.
there's times where people are going to be complete jackasses.
Oh
Like,
god, like, I've been physically attacked before at work because I won't give someone a table, like, shit is crazy.
yeah, exactly. But you still have to keep calm and carry
Mhm,
on, like the Brits would say.
mhm.
Um, but I mean, it had to have helped you out with your people skills. And it made sense to me when I heard the host say that.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I am a firm believer that, like, everybody in the world should work a service job at least for a little while because it helps you, just learn how to interact with other human beings, and it gives you a
Mhm.
lot more empathy too. Like, when you're going in, like, I mean, I tip like crazy at restaurants because I know.
I'm glad you bring that up. Okay, so I have spent most of my time in the Orlando area. Okay. Now
Mhm,
we have all the theme parks. A lot of our economy is based on tourism.
mhm,
And people don't believe me when I say this. Other countries, they just don't tip.
mhm.
Do Canadians tip? Is that like a custom?
Yes, Canadians do definitely tip, and, the general thought is around 15% is, like, okay, but that's, like,
Mm,
for did they bring you your food at all?
mm,
And then you should be tipping more than that, but, I mean, you do also still get some of the older people who are like, "I'm not tipping," or "I'm not tipping very much."
mm.
I've also like, I see a lot of the same stuff you'd see in the States, like, I've even had that guy come into the restaurant who, like, puts a stack of money down on the table and says,
And they
"I'm gonna
take it
take
away.
away."
Yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
know what? I would just tell you, "Hey, buddy, I'm not a dancing chicken for you. I'm not going to beg for that money." And I think that is a really asshole thing to do,
Mm,
to put money on the table and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a little bit every." You know what I would say?
right.
"Hey, there's a nice place down the street," because I'm not going to just bend over backwards. Like, I'm gonna do my job. I'm gonna be
Mm,
polite, and just don't think like, because it almost makes it seem like, hey, you're like a slave or something.
oh, yeah.
I know slaves don't get paid, but what I'm saying is it's kind of like, oh, I'm gonna just pull money away from you. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
just I think that's always just kind of
Oh,
a
that's,
screwed.
like, the rudest thing one of the rudest things I've ever seen, like, I mean, but that's a good reason to try out working in one of those industries because 'cause we'd have less people like that if they got it a little bit more, if they were on the other side of it, at least at some point, right?
So I talked a little bit about this,
Mhm,
about the cosplay, especially the women at some of these places.
mhm,
They get uncomfortable, and I'm just being honest. I'm sure. Have you ever run into with what you do that over aggressive guy that maybe might be into you? I'm just gonna come out and say it, like stalker
mhm.
type guy.
Oh, yeah.
You
Absolutely.
have.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, like, and that's the thing, you would think that you would get it more in the communities that I'm in, and, like, when I'm actively at a show and I'm trying to perform, like, you'd think that would be where I would get it. That's not where you get it. I mean, you do get some of it there, but it tends to be after the fact when you're, like, least expecting it, that's when they come out.
Yeah, but they don't wanna let you know, like, they'll be
Mhm,
cool and calm around you, but they're
mhm.
like, "Oh, I was watching you the whole." And I'm not trying to, like, freak you
No, yeah.
out or anything,
No.
but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you have to be careful,
Mm,
like, eh
absolutely. And I mean, there are guys in the community. Luckily, a lot of the people who are fellow performers or fellow models, everybody all sort of talk. We're all friends. So, like, if somebody has a bad experience with someone, everybody's going to know. And if they're a regular in the community, they're not going to be allowed into the shows. Like, it's actually a really well self policing sort of space.
Now with COVID going on right now, like, I'm sure you haven't been able to do any live shows. Have
Mm.
you guys had to start doing those, like, online or do virtual type shows?
So yeah, there have been virtual shows.
Mm,
I personally actually haven't done any because there's only a few, and with like groups that were already established for doing shows themselves, and I produce a format that doesn't translate really well to
Mhm.
digital because it also involves improv comedy, which is like every time you try to watch that on Zoom, it's
Yeah.
always kind of a yeah, trash fire. So I haven't even
No,
bothered
no,
trying.
no, I agree. People don't realize this is that
Mhm,
being there in a room with somebody like
mhm,
a live audience, they can feel your
mhm,
attitude, your confidence, your
mhm,
delivery, and that does not come across sometimes
mhm.
over the internet. It just doesn't.
Oh, yeah, especially depending on what type of thing you're doing. So, I mean, I have seen some burlesque shows where people have pre-produced their act and, like, sort of use filmmaking techniques to make it look really cool, which is great. That's something you can't do on stage. But at the same time, when they're performing, they're not getting any of the, like to put it in context for people who don't know, burlesque shows are very loud places. People are like cheering and clapping and yelling and hooting and hollering the whole time, and it's encouraged because it makes it easier for the performer to sort of get out of their shell. There's a lot of interacting with the audience. Like most of the time, the house lights are up, so it's a big part of it. And if they're not there to give you the other side, it can feel weird.
I see this is how I do interviews because
Mhm,
I mean I prep for it, but I start out with a question and then you'll say something and then I'll
mhm,
bring it out. Why is it? Because I've got a couple of women here in the United States that are regulars on my show
mhm,
that are into that nerd community. Why? Because she's into, doing the burlesque type style stuff. Why is it because when you're in the nerd community, like, people expect you to be one way? Is it empowering or like,
mhm,
what made you get into it, and why does it
mhm,
seem like the nerdy type girl
mhm.
gravitates to that type of stuff?
I think that there's a little bit of, already feeling like the outsider when you're in the sort of nerd community, as a woman, just because, like, other girls aren't gonna really get you, and then a
Mhm,
lot of the guys, like, unless you find some that are really good friends to you, like, they're not gonna really want you there, so you
mhm,
already feel sort of put out, so then it doesn't matter anymore, and it in some ways, that's sort of freeing for you to then just go for it, and because then you'll meet somebody who already does it, and they'll introduce you to it, and then they help you, and that's the way a lot of people get into it is through friends,
mhm.
and yeah, and which is part
Was
of
it
why that
nerve-wracking?
community is
What was it nerve-wracking the first time?
oh my god, like, my the first time I did it, because the other thing is a lot of the costumes are handmade, I was
Mhm.
so paranoid that it was
About
gonna
something
fall
falling
apart.
off? Yeah. Now,
The
can you
pasties were, like, huge, and there was, like, 3 layers of tape. It
Oh,
was crazy.
so you actually go down to nothing but pasties then?
Oh, most people do. Most people do, yeah.
See, because I when I think of burlesque, I'm
Mhm,
thinking more of, like, lacy
mhm,
lingerie type, maybe a corset type thing,
mhm,
and I'm sure that you guys wear that type of stuff,
mhm,
but I didn't know, because I don't think people actually realize that Canada, everybody thinks Canada is, a democracy exactly like the United States, but I mean,
mhm.
you guys really don't have the type of First Amendment free speech that we have here in the United States, though.
I mean, it's not like because we don't have, like, an amendment, we don't have people who are saying all the time, like, "It's my First Amendment right," but we still have that environment very much so where, like, everybody does have free speech, we very much want people to have it, it is encouraged,
But it
but
is
there
limited.
are
There's
yeah,
limitations on it,
there are
right?
limitations, there are, and I mean, especially in the burlesque community, there are limitations depending on the city you're in terms of what you're allowed to do and how far it can go. I mean, I know some people who I'm friends with, very recently, all they did was they went from rather than being in Toronto, they went to Hamilton, which is just a sort of a suburb of Toronto.
That
And
damn Hamilton.
yeah, the Hammer. They went
Yeah.
up there and they got hit with a lawsuit for doing a burlesque show because they were doing like I don't remember what the term was, but they were basically like
Mhm.
running a strip joint without a license, which wasn't the case really, and they had to fight it in court and everything. Like it,
Um,
yeah.
it was funny because they passed the ordinance here in Orlando where I live. But see, that's the thing about it. You can go 60 miles and go to Tampa, and it's like everything goes. It's like welcome to the Thunderdome. But in Orlando, because we have a lot of tourists that come to town, a lot of older people. They love to keep this like little bit of image. So they limited what the strip clubs could do in the Orlando area. Now, I got to give this one club credit that they skirted around the rules and they did a rendition of Hamlet, but it was, nude or burlesque type style. And it really dumbfounded a lot of the politicians and the lawmakers because they're like, all right, so this is kind of art, which is considered free speech or expression. So I mean, what are the laws here? And it was actually a very interesting story for a while that a lot of the news covered.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, there's a play about it that I saw not too long ago about that happening in England too. Like, it's always the way of people wanna see naked people, and there's not anything that's
Oh yeah.
gonna stop them.
No, 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 no. I mean, listen, now I
Mhm,
I will admit that there needs to be some laws because, we have minors that
mhm.
get, and you got
Oh,
the
yeah.
sex slave trade and all that stuff. So
Mhm,
yeah, there needs to be some laws set in place, but how I've always looked at it, if it's a verbal contract or two consenting adults
mm,
that are not being forced into anything and they want to do that,
mhm.
I have absolutely no problem with that at all.
Oh, yeah, no, and I mean, that was something that even here in Canada, you still hear about. I can't remember which prime minister it was or exactly when it was, but it was a lot more recently. I wanna say in, like, the '70s or '80s, who said something about, like, how Canada's politicians have no place in the bedrooms of
No.
the
Mm.
Canadian people, and it's like, yeah, no, that's the point. So
No, I mean,
so, yeah, like, as long as nobody's being hurt, I don't see the problem, and that's why having to skirt around rules can be frustrating, but it can also lead to artistic expression, so
but the sad thing is, I don't know if it's this way in Canada, but the ones that are wanting to judge us, the ones that are wanting to make rules are the ones that have the skeletons in the closet
Mhm.
or the ones that are the freakiest of them all or have some like really extreme kink that they're into.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just weird because these politicians
Mhm.
are the ones trying to make rules for us, but they want to live by their own standards.
Oh, yeah, no, but because they know that they'll get the intense people to vote for them if they go really hard on one issue. Even if it doesn't agree with them personally, you just have to see where anger begets more anger and it gets people fired up. It's politics are like that, and it's unfortunate. And it's something that, like, I mean, you would have seen much more of it in the States than even we do here, although we do see
Mhm.
it here too.
Elena,
Mhm.
right? I
Yeah.
wanna make sure I pronounce that right.
Yes.
I could sit here and talk to you forever, but, I don't wanna be that guy. So what I'm trying to say is I want to have you on again. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope, like, I didn't get too personal. I hope that it was a little enlightening conversation,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm just, because I have low self-esteem, so I'm thinking the whole time, like, she's like, "When is this, creepy nerd gonna get me off this interview?" So
Nah, you've been fine. You've been absolutely fine.
so tell people once again, if they wanna check you out, where can they go?
For sure, yeah. So you can find me on all the socials at Dottie Champagne. So that's Dottie, like the short form of Dorothy, and then champagne, just like the wine. So that's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on all those. And then keep a lookout for sparkling wine with Dottie Champagne, which will be launching very shortly.
Alright, Elena, I really appreciate this, and I look forward to talking to you again, okay?
Yeah, absolutely, Tuddle. Thanks for speaking.
Alright, no problem. Have a good night.
You too.